fantastic.
It's cool.
The internet is amazing. Okay.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So we're live. I don't know what's happening. Hey, when I do this, can you still see and hear me?
I can still see and hear you.
Okay, good. Okay. So now we're live on we're live on the internet. Let me edit this post so that there's actually a title for it.
Sure.
Oh my God. I don't know. This is. Can I edit post? Edit it. Okay, say something about this live video. Yes.
Technology.
Yes. Let me. Chris. No. I'm doing it. No.
Oh, Ralph was doing a live interview.
Okay, sort of. It hasn't even begun yet. All right.
We just gotten the bugs mixed out there. It's not bad.
Okay, so first of all, Chris, we haven't talked in maybe a few months. How is yes? How is the quarantine treating you? First of all,
the quarantine is treating us all right. I am primarily a writer, so it hasn't affected that. We have had to close the Odd Lot Improv Theater, and it's kind of weird and surreal because we're so used to planning every weekend, and we have Monday, Friday, Saturday shows, and always trying to stay on top of it. And to be honest, I think we didn't realize how much we were doing until we weren't doing it, and then we're just like, what do we do? I can't even tell what day it is.
Wow.
It's really strange because we kind of mark our days by, is it a show day? Is it not a show day? How many days till the show day? And it's really weird. It's kind of liberating and terrifying.
So for context, for anybody watching who will watch this, you are the proprietor.
Yes.
And one of the main performers of Odd Lot Improv improv company who puts on shows in Savannah, Georgia. Your theater is at the top of a cafe.
Yes, the Savannah Coffee
Roasters. Savannah Coffee Roasters. Okay, and and so you've been running that and doing regular shows for what, like 11 years?
Yeah, pretty much. 10 years as Odd Lot, 1 year as Literary Improv League. And this will mark the longest amount of time that we have not done a show in 10 years. It's a twiddle of the thumbs kind of situation. We're like, oh, what do we do with this free time? And we've been talking about doing something like this. This is why I knew what StreamYard was because I was like, what can we put together? You could put up to like 6 people on this and broadcast it live. So you might be seeing Odd Lot stuff soon.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'd love that. Oh wait, I'm losing you a little bit. What was that? What's that you're saying?
No, I'm here. I'm just
okay. So you do that you run that short form, or you run that improv company. You guys do more form, which is like a lot of improv games that are more in the audience, and like the games are very defined, so everybody, the audience, can follow. Like, these are the games that we're doing, and it's almost like a game show. It's like a competition. It's comedy sports, right?
It's comedy sports, very similar to comedy sports. We don't have winners except the audience,
except for the audience. Yeah.
But for the most part, it's kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway? Is probably the closest comparison that we can draw. We do long forms for our special shows or specialty shows where we'll take a full 2 hours to tell one story. And we did a full length musical, and we've done Choose Your Own Adventures, which were very popular. So
Yeah, and the mystery theater you were doing.
Yeah, we do a murder
the
mystery theater, which is a fun thing to do. And that's one story. You choose a character and you just drive that character home.
Wow. And but so as you said, you're primarily a writer. You consider yourself primarily a writer?
Yeah. That's basically my my thing. It's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm undergoing so like at the start of this year, I started doing a write a feature a week. So I've been writing a feature or a full length stage play a week since the first week of January, and I'm working on my 12th this week.
Wow. Is that an unprecedented bit of productivity for you?
So yes, in a lot of ways, what was happening was I find that given a deadline, I produce, and in the past, many times have I been approached by producers, directors, people who just wanted scripts done, and I found myself, crunching and doing it. I think the shortest amount of time I've ever written a script was 11 hours. I sat down and wrote for 11 hours straight, and that's not including like a lunch break in there, so maybe 9 hours.
Okay.
The whole thing being, if I can do it when I'm put to the task, why can't I just do it? What is it that, and so I started breaking it down and realizing that I write approximately 10 pages an hour. And if I gave myself 2 hours a day, I could write 20 pages a day. And then at the end of 5 days, I'd have a 100-page script. So that's basically what I've been doing. And very rarely does it come to 100 pages. Usually the storyline just kind of sews itself up somewhere in the between 88 and 95 pages.
Wow. And so you've been cranking those out once a week since the top of the year. And now this quarantine has probably boosted your productivity.
Well, and that's just it. Even today, I got to the end of my 2-hour window, and I was like, I don't really have anything else to do today. I could keep writing. But I decided that maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe the best idea is to stick to a regimen rather than splurge or get off of the regimen. I don't need to prove anything to myself.
Yes.
That was a hummus container opening very loudly beside me.
Yes, good.
Yeah.
Good. I like how it roars to life and it affirms, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm
hummus.
Prepare to be satisfied.
Dip a carrot in. Hang on, I'm going to dip a carrot.
Primarily consider yourself a writer, a screenwriter, playwright. Get that hummus in you. But also, so what is the?
I primarily think of myself as a storyteller.
Okay.
And whatever medium that comes in, then that's improv, and that's acting, and that's writing, directing, painting. Anytime you're trying to communicate what's inside to another human being, I consider storytelling, and I also consider it art.
Okay, so that's a good place to jump into. So the crux for me, what I'm mostly interested in right now, in terms of this idea for a show I want to do, is I really like dissecting art and talking about art and going like, what is this? Why, for the purposes of this show, why does this thing work? What did a certain piece of art teach you? How are you applying that lesson to your own work? So I just really love to hear people talk about their influences, how they've influenced them, what those influences taught them. So for me, so I asked you to pick just 2 pieces of art from someone maybe famous, and then from a peer, someone that you know, and present those in whatever way. So whatever it is, whether, I think the first thing you said was a painting.
Yes.
If you want to hold that painting up to your camera, and then we'll figure out how to.
The painting I'm showing you is actually not the painting that the story is about, but it is the painter. And it's
okay.
It's Starry Night. We're all familiar with Starry Night. And Starry Starry Night, of
Yes,
course,
yes. Van Gogh.
is a classic, but it's Van Gogh. And the
Yes.
story is basically when I was very young. I'm thinking 6 or 7 years old. I was taken to a museum in Frankfurt, Germany, and there was this painting that was very small. It was not big at all. And looking at it, there was something very specifically moving to me about it. And it took me a long time to actually come up with the actual answer to it. But it was messy, was part of it. It wasn't
Huh.
like all the paintings that I had seen to this period, being a child, you see picture books and you see these things where everything's in the line and everything is vibrant and clear and there's no muddled colors or anything. But I remember getting so close to this. I was pushed back by a guard because I was like reaching out to touch it.
Oh wow! What was the painting of? Oh, you did touch it. Yes,
I did.
and they still haven't caught you.
So it was like flowers, but the whole thing was like a close up of flowers, and so much so that when you're first looking at it, I was not sure that they were flowers because it was like it wasn't a vase. It was like a field, but just the square, the viewfinder of the field. And I remember when I was really close to it, I saw the brush, like the brush indentation where the painter had just kind of gooped the paint on and dragged the brush along. And I in my mind, I swear I saw like the actual bristle of a brush that came off in the stroke. And I was thinking, even at that time, what I was witnessing was a man who painted because he had to, because it was urgent, because something inside him was like, get it on the canvas, just get it out of my head, get it out of me and into the world. And so I came up with a term for that, which was the savage brushstroke. The savage brushstroke is art that must be made, that can't be contained, that is essential to the artist to create, and thereby essential to the audience to see.
Can I tell you, Chris?
Yes.
Can I tell you quickly? I knew this would happen. I was scrambling because I love a title. And I was like, I don't know. I was scrambling in my mind as we were getting. I was like, I want to start now, but I was like, I can't start until I have a title. No, I must just begin. And I bet that as I am going along, a title in this first conversation, I bet a title will find me. This show is called The Savage Brushstroke.
How about it, sir?
Got it. Okay, please continue. Yeah.
So I've actually utilized the Savage Brushstroke concept a lot in my life, and I found that I'm drawn to things that remind me of that. Janis Joplin singing was a savage brushstroke to me. When I listened to her sing, I was like, she's not singing because she has a pretty voice. She's not singing for any other reason than she had to. It sounded like she was just, it was wrenching out of her. And it became vital to me. And I really saw it. And every now and then, like when I'm reading, I will come across something that, that while I'm reading, I'm like, this writer just poured it out onto the page, and I sense it and I see it. Edgar Allan Poe was like that. When I'd read his work, I could feel the author sharing something with me, something inside, something that he couldn't contain, and so he put it in this book, and it was passed to me over a century later. So I find myself oftentimes doing that.
A big Savannah figure, right?
What's that?
He's a big Savannah figure, Edgar Allan Poe.
Am I correct? No, he's from Maryland.
Okay. Was it New York?
Horror person, and so as far as ghosts and ghoulies and darkness are concerned, he certainly fits into the theme of Savannah.
Yes.
But
thank you for saving me.
Yeah, no, I mean, tone-wise, he would fit into Savannah very well. He's all about creepy, drafty, wet and stones and blah blah blah. He loves a ghost story. Yes. And that brings me, oddly enough, straight to the pier art that I wanted to talk about.
Yes.
Because one of the biggest Savage Brushstrokes that I'd ever seen, and I all my life I've identified with this is Don Quixote. The story of Don Quixote is a man who, surrounded himself with books about knights and epic adventures and fantasy. And then one day his mind just snapped and he went on these adventures in the real world and encountered people. And it was an amazing Savage Brushstroke by Miguel de Cervantes. Cervantes wrote this incredible novel at a time when novels were not a thing. And he was quoted as saying, for I alone, Don Quixote was born, and for him, I was born. He stated that his life's purpose was this book. And when I read it, it is this incredible story about trying to fit in while still holding on to your passion and dreams. It was about a man who defied reality to live in his own construct. And there's so much to that. And so Don Quixote is a huge thing to me. And recently in Savannah, they produced Man of La Mancha, which is the musical version of Don Quixote. And my friend, Justin Kent, was co-founder of Odd Lot with me. He created Odd Lot with me.
Yeah.
He played Cervantes and Don Quixote. He played the lead role, and he was phenomenal. It was breathtaking. I had heard him sing before, but never with such focus and such discipline. It was an incredible. He did an incredible job. He cut right through all of the staging that we get into as actors. When we're performing, we fall into this sort of pattern of behavior that fits on the stage, but doesn't necessarily transcend it. I mean, the best actors do. The best actors know how to keep from being in the box that is, the stage. They know how to reach past it. But it is equally rare when people do it. Even great shows, they seem mechanical after a while. There are very mechanical motions. There are very mechanical emotions. There's you can kind of see the frame of the work, and that's mastery. When somebody can do that, but at the same time, if somebody can make you forget it's a show, while you're watching it, kind of rub away the stage presence, the idea that this is all staged and that this was, the work of, designers and, because especially being theater professionals, when we go to a show, a lot of times we can't settle into the show because we are awed by this, that set piece moving and that, and what had to go into the creation of this and the dynamics of the set construction. And so, in a lot of ways, I think your theater goer who is not involved in theater gets a better show because they can just be wowed. They can just be like, this is amazing. Whereas theater professionals go in and they're like, I see that and how that works, and I'm really impressed by that. And you dissect it as you're watching it. And every now and then, though, you go to a show where they're so good and it's so engaging.
It's rarer too.
Yeah. And yeah, as an actor, you sit there and you watch and you can be taken out of a scene, or you can be taken out by how good an actor is. If an actor's too good, you might find yourself being like, wow, he's just acting his ass off. And then you're like, I'm not appreciating what's happening. I've taken myself out to commend the actor and not the story that was being presented. So I found that this production of Man of La Mancha thoroughly engaging, but it was really Justin's performance that I had to say, this is far and away one of the better performances I've seen. Because it's textured.
What did you? So you're saying kind of the opposite of finding this show, which is beautiful because I wonder if that's still in there, maybe in retrospect. Were you you saw this thing that made you, for at least a moment, forget that you were watching a show. Moreover, watching your friend in a show. In retrospect, when you think about it, could you kind of see technically and reverse engineer technically how we achieve that, or B, does the fact that you weren't able to reverse engineer it, does that in itself teach you something about your work and how you approach your work? Has that affected how you approach your work?
Oh, absolutely. So that's a really good question, because what I find, and it's fascinating, is I think what I'm looking for, and often I think almost anybody's looking for, is satisfaction. Sitting in an audience and being satisfied by what's happening. And what's interesting is even something that is technically superior and perfect can become unsatisfying if you're caught up in all these other things. So if somebody can knock the critic out of my brain, I actually find that so rewarding. I'm so happy to be free of the critic in my brain. I'm so happy to be free of the technician in my brain or the writer in my brain, the writer especially. I am very hard on storytelling. Like when I watch a movie or I watch something, I'm always analyzing. And I really just want stories that will smack it right out of me. So,
Okay.
so yeah, I find that it's interesting, because I think what I'm looking for, again, we go back to the Savage Brushstroke. Savage Brushstroke is where the art represents the artist, but it affects me. You know, the creation itself stands on its own, and I don't necessarily have to pick it apart, because the effect on me is visceral. I am having a visceral response. So the question is, when I create, am I using my Savage Brushstroke? Am I creating the thing that I need to create, or am I just creating, which as a daily grind writer, a lot of that is just me saying, I need the 20 pages. I need that. I'm sorry.
Could you repeat that last part again? I got glitchy. Could you repeat just that last part?
Okay. Yes. So basically, I was saying that there's a part of creation which is the work, and sometimes in the work you have to recognize that the work is not necessarily going to be the Savage Brushstroke. You have to do it. And what I was saying was I'm a grind writer, so it means that I'm dedicated to getting my 20 pages a day. And whether I'm inspired to, or whether I feel it, or whether anything like that, I don't believe in writer's block.
Okay.
I don't accept it, because writer's block is an indulgence of the creative.
Ooh.
It is something that we allow ourselves to say is standing between us and the answer. I want to say it was Stephen King who once said, you've never heard of, like plumber's block, or, road giver's block, or ditch digger block. You never hear about block in the sense of a job to do. If you have a job to do, the task is clear. And that's true of storytelling too. The task is clear. It is set before you to get to the end. And if you stop thinking of the idea of the perfect thing and the perfect placement and the perfect motion, you might get more productive. But that may not be, necessarily the best thing. But what I've learned, and this was my big epiphany of doing the feature a week, was an imperfect something will always be better than a perfect nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you're not getting the work done, then it doesn't matter how great your ideas are. It doesn't matter how deep your soul is. It doesn't matter how incredible your vision is. If you have no means of transporting it, then you are no different than a tree. You're no different than something that is not creating. And mind you, if you can be satisfied by sitting and daydreaming and filling your life with your internal show, That's amazing. That's incredible. I just don't think that that's really the most of the population. I think we're always seeking inspiration from outside. We're always looking for that external experience. We're always looking for a group to be with, to experience something, and then turn to each other and be like, did you experience the same thing I experienced? Are we experiencing
Yes.
the same thing together? And
Yes.
I feel like that squarely becomes the burden of the storyteller, to get the
Yeah. Yeah.
story
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And
Does
whether,
yes.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm wondering if does this notion of the discipline of the grind life contrast or conflict or clash at all with the notion of the savage brushstroke? Do
It,
those?
it, it really does. But what happens, hopefully, what happens is the realization that my perception of the creation of art is not the entirety of it. You know, when I'm saying like, "Oh, slit your wrists and bleed out onto the page," and "No, let all this out and cry onto your keyboard,"
That's all funny. I want to see somebody just do that with no intention of making anything.
and that's just it. You know, I remember like in an early like writing class, one of my teachers was like, you know, every word you should pain over, you know, the placement of it, because each word has weight and significance. And he would cite like Edgar Allan Poe, and he'd be like, look at Edgar Allan Poe, no wasted words. Every word was a piece of the overall painting, and blah 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 blah. And I don't know that that was the healthiest thing to say, because then you had a bunch of people who were sitting waiting to cry over the next word, or waiting to have you know, endless epiphanies. And it's like, well, I don't think the epiphany is going to be word by word, but you know, certainly maybe moment by moment, and hopefully in the story whole is a single epiphany rather than all these, you know, separate ones.
Yeah, every word there is.
Right. Do you have any idea how long it would take to write?
Just having endless
every word is like,
yeah, yeah. Oh wow. Okay. So I'm gonna try to paraphrase. So what you're saying is you have found over time then that just getting down to it increases your chances of even finding one savage brushstroke,
absolutely.
and that is enough.
And mind you, if you think of your life as the single savage brushstroke, then everything that you do with it becomes a part of it. Rather than thinking that each individual piece of art has to be the savage brushstroke, but rather that pursuit, that joy that you find in creation, and that satisfaction you can make for yourself, that becomes, to me, the great work of your life. Not a single work, but your life as art.
Imagine that. Imagine you as a young 8 or 9-year-old boy in Germany seeing that glob of paint on that, reaching out and you know, committing the misdemeanor of touching the piece of art you weren't supposed to, reaching out and touching it, and how you perceived it then, and then now years later, how the scope of it, how it's widened, and now you see it not only as a metaphor for or evidence of what that stroke in itself contained, but now as a metaphor for not only your entire life and your entire canon as an artist, but for your entire life in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And I think that single philosophy, when you learn screenwriting, they tell you to master the log line, and the log line is, you know, sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Distillment of your entire story.
Yeah.
And
yes.
And then it's like, well, what would my life's log line be? You know, a man who constantly tried to tell the best stories he could. And, am I satisfied with that? Yeah, I think I am. If I could create that log line of a life, and that means cutting away a lot of the things that we call important, a lot of the things that we know, in a plot, there's so many pieces, but if you wanted to create the Wizard of Oz log line, it's, lost girl with the help of amazing friends finds her way home. And all the things that you've left out, that was that single central story that you were telling.
Yes.
And I was like, what's the single central story of my life? And I'm hoping that it will be, he tried to tell the best stories he could.
Yeah.
And in a way that goes on to, he tried to reach the most people he could. He tried to influence the most people he could. He tried to,
it implies all that.
It implies it. Yeah, it's all in there.
Well, I'm trying to think of there's nothing really to ask you if you would need to plug anything, because we're all just plugging our quarantine.
That's right.
But okay, I mean, this has been great. I think I've gotten everything out of this I want. You've really beautifully told us about those influences, which were Van Gogh's. Which was the name of that painting?
So
you showed Starry Night.
I showed Starry Night.
Yeah.
It started with the painting Starry Night.
But you saw a field of flowers being painted, and very savagely.
I have spent my whole life kind of looking for that painting.
Wow!
Because I haven't seen it again, not since then.
Oh my God! What a story!
And so, I have this dread feeling that one day, as an old man, I'll wander into some museum in Germany, and there it'll be, and I'll just keel over dead. That'll be
once you're desperate to find it, and you never want to see it.
Right. There's a part of me that's like, would it be the same? Because I think one of the weirdest things was how small it was. And keep in mind, I was small. So, imagine now how small it would seem now that I am much, much larger.
Imagine if to Van Gogh or to somebody else, they thought that was an insignificant work of his, and it is.
I don't think it certainly wasn't one that anybody remarks on. Like I've said, I've looked at, and I've gone through virtual museums. I've done things like that.
But it's like the seismic shock through your entire life.
It was something that changed my life. When I think about it, it changed my life, my entire life, in what was probably less than 2 minutes, maybe even a minute. I remember seeing it, going up to it, reaching out to it, and then being ushered away. And
in handcuffs.
Yeah. they were just loud Germans. They and luckily I didn't understand German at the time, so I'm not sure what they said. But they
so that so was that piece, that tiny Van Gogh painting, alleged, who knows what it was, Brian Van Gogh, and then also this performance of your friend who I know as well, Justin. What's his last name?
Kent.
Justin Kent, as the lead role in Man of La Mancha as Don Quixote.
Don Quixote has always been a story of great significance to me since I was very young. Tilting at windmills, dreaming impossible dreams, all of it, really.
Oh yes! Oh, I love that song, man. I've never seen that musical actually, but I love that song. Anyway,
go see it. It's really good.
Okay. Wow. Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Chris, for being the first guest on the Savage Brushstroke and giving me the title. Savage Brushstroke. This is beautiful. Okay. I'm gonna. I don't know how I'm gonna. It's gonna be online, hopefully. So
who knows?
You share it with whoever you want. Yeah. Hi. I have no idea how this works. All right, bud. I love you. Thank you so much.
Right. Love you too, man. I'll catch you later.
This has been I don't know how to end this. This has been the Savage Brushstroke. I'm Ralph Jean Pierre, Precious Gorgeous. I'm gonna post these somewhere. probably on my Facebook. If the only way it must be on my Facebook, that's the only way you'd be watching it. I'm gonna do some more today. Bye. I love you.